everyone. Today I'm going to be sharing the books that we've read for the month of April. If you are new to my channel, I am Ellen and I have 3 children who are 9, 8, and 6, and I post mostly about homeschooling, planning, and books. So today I'm going to share with you first the books that we read aloud during the month of April, and then my oldest son, the books that he's read, and then the books that I've read. The first book that we read aloud this month was The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate, and I really love this story. Not only was the story really nice, but it opened up a lot of conversations about animal cruelty and the way, animals have feelings too, basically. So the story centers around Ivan, who is a gorilla, and then also Stella, who is an elephant, and they are in captivity, basically, in this like rundown circus. And Stella, of course, wants to be free. A baby elephant ends up joining them, and Stella's only wish is for them to be able to be free, basically. So it kind of goes through their backstories as well, like how they ended up there, their life there, and then what happens at the end. I don't want to spoil it, but this was a very nice story. Again, not only because of the story, it was so sweet, and just the dialogue back and forth between the animals, you could really feel like how sad they were, and the moments of joy. It was just a very nice story. So I really like this. I almost cried in here too. So definitely recommend this one. The second book we read this month was Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. And this one was by Grace Lynn. Also definitely recommend this one. And this one is about a girl and Minli, excuse me, a girl, Minli, and she lives with her mother and father. They are like farmers, basically, and they're very poor, and the mother is always unhappy about that. The father tells these wonderful stories to Minli and just tries to keep her spirits up, and Minli decides to try to look for their fortune, basically. From one of the stories that her father tells, she's interested in finding their family's fortune. So she goes on a quest to find the family's fortune. Of course, the mother and father are super sad. They're devastated when their daughter leaves, and they just can't wait for her to return. But so she goes on a quest to find the family's fortune, and on the way meets a dragon who cannot fly and doesn't know why. So they both have questions unanswered, and they are on a quest to find the answer. So really love this story, enjoyed it, and definitely recommend this. So my oldest right now is reading through the Artemis Fowl series, and he is on book 5, and he is totally engrossed in them. He loves them. So that's what he's been reading this month. We've had to download them all in the Kindle though, because as you know, the libraries are closed, or at least they're closed where we are. So we can't get them from the library. So we've just been reading them on the Kindle. And yes, he reads those, and then at the end of each book, he goes online and finds the translation code for whatever the Gnomish code at the end, and then reads those before he reads the next book. So he's really enjoying those. So I read 6 books this month. I think that this month I've just been, I guess maybe like comfort reading. I've just found comfort in books, basically, this month, being stuck at home. So yeah, let's talk about those. The first book I read this month was Children of the Stars, and this story takes place in World War II, Germany occupied France, and it follows 2 boys who live with their aunt, and their mother and father leave to try to find a better life, a better place for them to live. They are Jewish, and of course Germany is taking over France, and they know that it's not gonna look good in the future. So they leave them with the aunt trying to find a better place to live, which, side note, I don't know if I could have done that. I just somehow, I don't know, I would have left with them or stayed with them. I don't know if I could leave my children like that. But anyway, so the boys, basically the Germans come and take over their little town, and the boys want to escape and find their mother and father. So the story is basically their route trying to find their mother and father, and it's a story about courage and friendship, the power of just love for one another, and helpfulness of, people that we don't know. Stranger kindness, basically. So I thought it was a really nice story, and it's not a children's book, but I think older children, it's a good story for older children to read, just to, you know, like if you were doing the Anne Frank and Number of the Stars, I think I would add that in there too. Okay, the second book I read this month was not a usual type of book for me. It was a murder mystery, which is not my favorite type, but I just read it anyway. 8 Perfect Murders. So this one, didn't really like it. This one was a story about a man who basically ran a bookstore, and he years ago had written a blog about the 8 perfect murders, and then listed out 8 books that are actually real books. Like there's Agatha Christie and A. Milne, and I can't think of the other books right now, but he listed out his favorite murder books. Like he titled it the 8 Perfect Murders. Like if you were going to murder people, like this is the perfect way to do it, basically, from those books. I think another book was Strangers on the Train. That one just came to me, and I can't remember the other ones, but they are actual real other books. I haven't read any of the other books, but I did learn that Milne wrote a murder mystery book. That's the author of Winnie the Pooh. So I didn't know that, but until I read this book. And that was probably the only good thing that I got out of the book, was just knowing that Milne wrote a murder mystery book. But so this guy runs a bookstore, has that blog, and then one day a federal agent comes in and is like, hey, there are some murders happening, and I think that they're related to your blog about the 8 perfect murders. Like I think those are related. I think one of the books was like ABC Murder or something like that, and then there was murders happening that kind of seemed like that, and she was like, can you help me solve these murders, basically. And I think for me, it kind of went downhill after that, because, you know, a federal agent coming to ask some random person to help them solve the murders. I finished the book because I was just wanting to confirm my theory of what the ending was, but I can't really recommend it. It wasn't my favorite at all, but it was interesting just learning about the other murder mystery books, basically. Okay, the third book I read this month was Siblings Without Rivalry, and I liked this book. I felt, okay, if you don't know the background of the book, so the book is basically about how to raise your children without having rivalry, just like the title suggests. And I like this book, and of course this book doesn't say like, read this book and then you'll never have children with rivalry again, they'll never fight again. Of course not. I think it gives great tips on how to raise your children, loving and appreciating and respecting their differences, and how not to make them rivals and make them like hate each other. It gives good tips for when siblings fight, how to deal with it, and how to love each child in their individual way, in the way in which they need, and just, you know, dealing with family conflict and how to kind of work through those. Not only did it give advice as far as like steps to take, but also it gave plenty of examples. So I liked the book for that. Okay, the fourth book I read was actually the second to last library book that I have, but this was in Inferno by Dan Brown, if you can see it without the glare. I thought that this was like a great time to read this because of COVID-19. But this one is the same author as Angels and Demons and The Da Vinci Code, if you are familiar with those. So this book was about Robert Langdon Still, and basically this transhumanist is, he knows and understands that the Earth's population is going up way faster than it should, and he loves that there were like the Black Plague and, you know, massive illnesses that kind of cut down the population. So he has created something to help cut down the population. So I love this book. I love all of Dan Brown's books, and so yeah, I like this one as well. And I felt like it was an appropriate time to read this one. This was actually a reread. I think I read it when it first came out. So I read it again because I felt like this was the time. So I do recommend that one if you love The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. The fifth book I read this month was Girl Stop Apologizing, and I don't know what compelled me to read this, other than I was just on Hoopla looking for a book to listen to on my runs and decided to read this one. It's a very, you know, don't apologize for who you are, be who you want to be, wah rah rah, women are great. You know, so if you need like a quick pick-me-up or something to that effect, then read this book. If not, then don't read the book. And that's all I have to say about that one. The sixth book I read this month was To Kill a Mockingbird, and I think I was supposed to read this in high school and I never actually did. And I saw Homeschool on the Hill, I saw her read it, and then that inspired me to read it myself, and I fell in love with the story. I really like this story. If you're not familiar with it, it takes place in the South, and it follows a girl, Scout, and her brother. And Scout, I think at the beginning of the story, is about 6, and their father Atticus is a lawyer, and he's older, so she's 6 and he's like already 50 or so. And he ends up having a case about a black man who supposedly like raped or beat a white woman, and so this story takes place, I think, in the 40s. I could be wrong on that one. And it just goes through, you know, the case basically. And it's very interesting, and it's a good look into history, and I think it's an important read, probably for a high school level, but also adults if you never read it. It was really good, and I really do recommend that. So those are the books that we read this month. Have you read any of the ones that we've read, and what are you reading? If you have any book recommendations, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.